Hey there, Blazer fans. Welcome to episode 6 of The Dragon's Den, a podcast for those that bleed green and gold. Today I've got a very special guest with me, former UAB football running back Jegil Dugger. Jegil played for the Blazers from 1998 to 2001 and has his name in many of the current UAB rushing stat records. He was also a member of that special team that went down to LSU and beat the Tigers in 2000. Jegil also had a lot of great stories, mentioning many great players and coaches from his time at UAB, and he's now doing well in the tech industry. So he and I will get into all that in the episode. So let's go ahead and get into it. I hope you enjoy. Thank you. All right, Blazer fans, I've got my next guest here with me, guest number 6, a 5'10" running back from Detroit, Michigan, Mr. Jegil Dugger. Jegil, how you doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good. How's it going? How's it going, Will? Great to be here.
Yeah, it's going great, man. Thank you for joining, and I hope we get a lot to talk about, and I hope my listeners enjoy this. But I'll go ahead and get into some of your stats, kind of get my listeners familiar with you again. So you're 7th all time in UAB career rushing yards with 1,979, 6th all time in career rushing attempts, 5th in single season rushing attempts, 10th all time in single season rushing yards per game, 8th in career rushing touchdowns with 13, 5th all time in career 100-yard games, 7th in single season games gaining over 100 yards. Your best game was against Louisiana Lafayette in 2000 when you had 153 yards. UAB rushing leader in 2000 and in 2001. 6th all-time in UAB career all-purpose plays, and 2nd team all-conference selection in 2000. So a great list of stats there. You're in the record books, and you were born in Detroit. You moved here when you were 8, and you went to Midfield High School, and you started at running back beginning your sophomore season. You had offers from Arkansas, NC State, Memphis, Louisville, Southern Miss, Michigan, and, of course, UAB. So what made you choose UAB?
Man, wow, those stats, that sounds like a lot. Did you sure you fact check all of that?
Oh, yeah.
Basically, what made me choose UAB? That's a good question. So born in Detroit and moving to Alabama at a young age. My mom and dad, was definitely in my life, and so we definitely grew up in a lower economic area in Detroit and in Alabama. We lived in the western part of town, which was Central Park area, which was Inslee, and so the story behind it all, I didn't realize until I was probably sophomore year that I really had a gift for running a football. When I was younger, I played football, little league, and I was an offensive lineman actually in little league, so I was a bit overweight. And but I was real good at PE and things like that. And so it was when I got to high school, I actually started to have breakout games my sophomore year. And if you backtrack a little bit, when I was growing up in the Central Park Inslee area, gang violence was at all time high, and there were a lot of things that were taking place that regarding violence, and I was in a bad environment. And so when I got ready to go to high school from middle school, my mom made the commitment of sending me to Midfield High School versus going to Inslee or West End, which I was zoned for. And she did that for a number of reasons. At the time, Midfield was a pretty good school. It was a diverse school. It was about 60, 40, 60% black, 40% white, and there were some other ethnicities there as well. And so she determined that she wanted me to be in a better environment at the time. And so she chose Midfield, and I got to Midfield and started to excel in football. Well, she was actually using her income tax money to pay for me to go to Midfield because I was out of zone. So it was kind of like an out of zone fee.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first year she used the income tax to pay. The second year she used her income tax to pay. So the second year was the first year I started on the football varsity team. The first year I was ineligible my freshman year, and I played junior varsity and some varsity, but I couldn't play in a game. So my sophomore year was the first year I started in high school. And I remember we played a school out of Birmingham called Carver. And they had a huge linebacker. And our coach said, "Hey, if this guy hits you, he can knock the stew out of you." I mean, this guy was real impressive. And so the game was on the line. I think we were down by a couple of points, and it was like going late into the fourth quarter, and I got the handoff and took it around the corner, made a couple miss, and ended up breaking a tackle from this big stud linebacker, scoring the game-winning touchdown. And so that was kind of the highlight of my sophomore year. And so going into my junior year, my mom said, "Well, I can't afford to pay for you to go to midfield anymore out of zone fee, so you're gonna have to go to Inslee." And I cried. I was devastated. I had made friends, and so I went to the coaches and told them that we could no longer go to midfield, and they made a way for me to stay there. but anyway, so I stayed in midfield and ended up having a great career. Had a great coaching staff. I still keep in touch with a lot of those guys to date. They were like a father figure to me. So many of them out of the staff: Coach Williams, Coach Boren, Coach King, Coach Smith. A lot of those guys, man, I still talk to, and so I made good relationships there. And so then when I get into the recruiting process, coming out of high school, I ended up rushing, I think, somewhere around 1,700 my junior year, another 1,800 my senior year. And so I had a 9 points, whatever, yard per carry. I can't remember, but it was pretty up there because we had a great quarterback, great passing game. And so I didn't run the ball much, but I made it worth it when I would run it. And so anyway, so I ended up being rated as the top 50 running back in the nation through Tom Lehman. And so I was getting a lot of offers. Michigan was coming in, Arkansas was coming in. Houston Nutt's first year at Arkansas, he came in and offered a full scholarship, and NC State, a lot of the schools. Dabo Swinney was at Bama. He was fighting for me. And and so I remember, when it all started to shake down, I come to my mom and, I said, "Well, where do you want me to go?" And she was like, "I just don't want you to go too far." And so my mom was actually working at UAB. She was working in the housing office. And so I didn't realize that they were baking cakes for her and all that stuff up there while she was at work. But she was working in the houses office. And so anyway, so she wanted me to stay close. And so I never thought I would go. And so she kind of pushed that decision for me to go to UAB. I stayed close to home. I was able to kind of help her out, around the house, things of that nature. And so it was the thing that worked out. Coach Brown was the head coach. He sold it as, "Look, I understand you going to SEC. I understand you going to some of these big schools. That's great, but you can stay right here at home. The first game of the year of your career, you're going to play Nebraska. You're going to play Virginia Tech. You're going to play Tennessee. You're going to play Florida State. You're going to play LSU. All those big teams that you probably dream of playing. You can play them right here in your backyard." So I remember that being the sales pitch, and and so that was the sales pitch. And on top of that, I'm a mom's boy, and I felt like I wouldn't have been in that predicament if my mom had did what she did early on in high school to save my life, to steer me away from violence and things like that. So I kind of let her make that choice for me.
Okay. I mean, that's great. And I can see the sales pitch right there. I mean, that's a pretty good sales pitch, but that kind of leads it kind of leads me into my next question. Your first game in 1998, you played UAB played number 3 Nebraska. Did you play in that game, and what was it like?
So that year, oh my God, we had Coach Cal Gundy as the running back coach, which is now at the University of Oklahoma. That was my running back coach that recruited me. And so I just remember, first of all, I remember going through 2 days leading up to that, which was gruesome. And so they brought me in as a true freshman to play. Like they didn't bring me in to redshirt. They brought me in to play as a freshman. And looking back, I don't think I was ready as a freshman to play. I kind of wish I would have redshirted, but I remember going into that game, and I remember honestly, that was the first time I had flown on an airplane. It's when we went to the University of Nebraska and Lincoln. And so I remember getting in the locker room, and I can remember like Cal Gundy saying, Jegil Dugger, Midfield High School, welcome to Nebraska. And so it's like this is big time football, and that was the first game, and I did play some, and I mean it was extremely hot in Lincoln that time. I think it was around September, and back then they had the older turf.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't have the newer model turf. They had that old old turf or whatever. And I remember we had these big socks, and it was a hot game. But it was the first time I had been exposed to being in front of that many people. I mean, the stadium with 80,000 plus screaming fans. So it was a nice experience. But it was one of those experiences where looking back, you're like, God, was I really ready for that? I mean, the game seemed extremely fast. I always tell people, the biggest jump that you'll make in athletics, in my opinion, is not the college to the pros. It's from the high school to the college, and that's it's a huge jump. And I say that because you're not only dealing with the speed factor, you're also dealing with the strength factor. These guys are so much stronger because of the development from a senior in high school to a junior in college it's a huge difference, right? So you're dealing with the speed, you're dealing with the strength, and then on top of that, you're dealing with the size. I mean, the biggest player on our team in high school was probably maybe 6'1", 6'2", or something like that. And then, playing coming from 4A ball at the time, we were, and so you go to college and you got guys that's like 6'5", 6'6", 6'8", 300 pounds, 360, and you like, Jesus Christ, as a running back. So it's a big jump. But yeah, I remember that game. I remember the Nebraska game. I remember it being a high game. I remember the score being 14-7 at the half. So we played them pretty tight for the first half. And, they kind of got away from us the second half. But yeah, I remember that.
You guys went 4-7 in your first season. In 1999, you guys got off to you almost pulled off the win against Missouri in your first week, falling by 3. But then the next week you played Michael Vick and the Virginia Tech Hokies. So you played across from Vick. What did you at the time think he would be the big name in the NFL that he became?
Well, I did not. I knew that Vic was a great player. In fact, I have a book, Tom Lehman's book that I was in as a running back, and that's an interesting book that I always want to keep a copy of, just as I grow old, because you look in that book and it's like the greatest high school players of that year across the country by state. And so, I didn't know a whole lot about Vic other than the fact of I didn't even realize he was in that book till I went back and reflect. Like, here's Michael Vick. He was one of the greatest high school players coming out of North Carolina, wherever he came out of. And so, I remember them talking about how good he was and the type of quarterback he was. But I never thought that he would be the type of player that he is today, or as far as the legend. But I will say that he was very, very impressive as a quarterback. I mean, he's probably one of the best quarterbacks that I can say that I've stepped on the same field with in the sport, because he was capable of running and throwing from that standpoint. And that was the one thing that I will say. I think my freshman year, I want to say T. Martin may have still been at Tennessee when we went there. Yeah, I think he was there. And so, I know, I'm me being an offensive guy, I remember defensive guys more so. But I remember that Tennessee also had a linebacker that was extremely, I mean, he was a bounty hunter. God, what was his name? He was the Mike backer at the University of Tennessee, but he was a real bounty hunter. He was tough. Oh God, what was I can't think of this linebacker name. He played in the NFL for a long time. But I say that to say that while at UAB, playing against a lot of these teams that we played against, we got exposed to seeing a talent such as Michael Vick on a regular basis. I think that same year that we played Virginia Tech, we also got a chance to see the great Tim Rattay, which was at Louisiana Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And hit the great receiver that he had there to throw to Troy Edwards. And, so it was constant talent flying around the field during those days.
Okay. So you guys finished the 1999 season 5-6, but you did get the first win over a ranked opponent in UAB history and a 36-17 win over number 17 East Carolina. What was that game like?
Man, East Carolina was always fun to play. East Carolina was always good to play, and they were very competitive. They had a great quarterback. I think David Gerard was there around that time or whatever. And I just remember, playing against East Carolina, they're being very physical on defense and very fast, and they had some nice size about them. But every year we had, I think pretty much every year I was there for well, maybe excluding my freshman year, for 3 years we went against East Carolina, and that was one of those teams that you knew that when you played them, you could beat them, but you were going to have to play one of your best games to beat them.
Mm-hmm. So in 2000, you guys started 1-1, and then you went down to Baton Rouge and faced the LSU Tigers, and we all know what happened in the end. But what were some highlights that you remember from that game?
Yeah, I just remember, leading up to the game. I remember leading up to the game, we played, I think, Tennessee Chattanooga, and that was the opening game. And Tennessee Chattanooga was 1AA.
Mm-hmm.
And at that year was kind of my breakout year at UAB altogether. I remember helping scoring the game-winning touchdown against Tennessee Chattanooga because we actually struggled with those guys. And that's the funny thing about college football, especially, and sports in general. It's that first game. It's kind of hard. You're trying to get your offense going. You're trying to get your rhythm. It's one thing to practice all summer, but it's another thing to put it into effect during the game. And so the Tennessee Chattanooga game was one that we squeaked away with. And so everybody was like, oh my God, this team may not be that good this year. And hell, I'm even thinking, we may struggle this year. This is a 1AA team. And so then we leave that game and go to the University of Kansas, and we squeaked a loss with. And I mean, we really played Kansas. We played them twice. I mean, we played them very well. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, that game went down to the wire. And so we made a few mistakes down, at the end as far as penalties and things like that. But we could have very well beat Kansas that year. And we played them tight at Kansas, but it was still we still came up short. And so going into the LSU game, it's interesting about that team in general going into the LSU game, because that team, I remember when I was recruited, and I go back to that moment, they talked about my class being the first legitimate Division I class that UAB had recruited. And so they felt like that was the first Division I class. So you started to see a turnover, a big difference from my sophomore to my junior year. The mentality, the work ethic, the attitude, all that stuff started to click. And so, going into the LSU game, I mean, we really expected to win. I mean, the coaches expected to win. I remember Bill Clay, which was a great defense coordinator for UAB. And I mean, he went on to coach at Oklahoma State for a long time. He was very good. He really felt that, what he had seen on film, and he told his defense that we can stop these guys, and we felt on offense we could play with these guys. So you had a lot of guys on our team. We had played against Virginia Tech. We had played against Tennessee. We had been in Nebraska. We were very well. Every year we played these big schools. So for us to get on the big stage, it was nothing new, and we were, in fact, excited to be on the big stage. That's what we dreamed of. That's what we wanted, because we felt we belonged there. And so, I just remember going into the LSU game, we really did expect to win in front of 80,000 people, and they picked us for their homecoming. And so we get into the game, and I remember my dad. I tell a story my mom always tell, because my dad was living in Detroit, and my mom, and all my family was at the game, and my mom's always tell that there's a story where you're at a stadium with 80,000 people, and everybody's going into the stadium, and like there's this huge crowd, and everybody's trying to stay together with their party. And my mom looks up, and my dad's like probably 50 to 70 yards ahead of them by himself, and she can see the top of his hat. And she tells my family, like, oh my God, he's all the way up there. He's leaving us or whatever. And so they have to kind of run to catch up with them. And they catch up with them. And my dad is deceased now, but he looks at my mom and she tells the story. She said he literally looked at her and tell her, I will not miss a split second of this game, not even warm up. He said, and if I do miss it, I'll never forgive you. And so apparently he knew something going in, but we get into the game, and they had a great defensive team. Brady James went on to the Cowboys. Falk, was a linebacker that was great. They had great running backs. They had great players all over the place, and it was smash mouth. And I remember remembering as a running back, like how hard we were playing that game. And I didn't expect to get I wanted to break the long run, but I also, I had a bunch of runs to where, 3 yards here, 5 yards here, 7 yards here, make a couple miss. And that was my thing. I understood that as a running back that they were fast up front, and so my goal was to, get north and south as fast as possible. And that's one thing that we did well against them. We ran the ball well and passed the ball well. But I remember going into the halftime of that game and looking and thinking like everybody was quiet. And if I recall right, we were up by a touchdown or something like that going into the half. And here it is like homecoming, and the whole stadium is quiet. And there's this little area of green, and that's us. It's probably maybe 10,000 or 5,000 people. And so that's the one little area that I remember that was cheering, but everybody was like, what in the world is happening? I mean, you got Nick Saban on the sideline. And I think even Saban was shocked. Like, where did these guys come from? But it was interesting because we knew. And then, so, we go to halftime up, we come back out, and they make a run for it. We expected that. We expected them to play well in the second half, and they did. They made it an interesting game. That so we get down the stretch, and I remember that we were scheduled to go to overtime. Everything was pinning towards overtime, and I'm thinking like, okay, get ready. We're going to overtime. Let's get ready to go to overtime. It's going to be a fight, but we can still win it. And so we get down, and they get the ball back. Josh Booty, the quarterback, he rears back, and he attempts to throw. I mean, we had no idea that he was going to throw the ball. We're thinking that he's going to run this clock out, and we're going to go to overtime, and we're going to fight in overtime, and may the best man win. So he rears back and throws the ball, and we intercept it. Chris Brown intercepts it. And I'm like, what the world? Like, who would even attempt this? Like, it was a gift from God. And so, we intercept the ball, and now the game plan is to run the ball, don't make any mistakes. I was the running back in there. And also when I'm running the ball, let's line it up to where it's going to be an easy field goal. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be on the hash. We don't want to be on the left hash. Rhett wanted a straight on kick. And so when they call the run plays, they would tell me, hey, line it up, make sure, let's give them a good kick. And so the runs that I were making were north and south, north and south, north and south. And so he got a straight on kick, and he kicked it in there, and we win the freaking game. And of course, nobody, and I remember now even Nick Saban wanted to take responsibility for who called that pass play that got intercepted. I recall like even Saban or they were talking on a talk show, and it was said that Josh Booty made that decision to call that play himself. But after that game, he no longer started. I don't know if you remember this, but Rohan Davey ended up being the quarterback that took his position after that UAB game. And Rohan went on to the NFL. But yeah, so it was an interesting thing. But yeah, that interception was huge.
From there, you guys, you finished the season 7-4. That was the first season, first winning season at the 1A level. How frustrating was it not to make a bowl game in that first year. And do you feel like you guys could have competed well in a bowl game in that stage?
Oh man, we were a great team. I'll be honest with you. That 7-4 season that we look at, and you got to look at the schedule that we played that year, and then on top of that, the games that we lost that we could have potentially won. The Kansas game could have easily put us 8-3. The Southern Miss game went to overtime. That could easily put us 9-2. So, in my opinion, the only game that we really truly got outplayed that year was against Louisville. So I look at that season. I look at that team as a one-loss team.
Mm-hmm.
Because every game we were in it, to win. With an opportunity to win. And so to not go to a bowl was just it was detrimental. And looking back, it's just hard to explain why you don't take that team to at least a bowl after beating LSU and going 7-4. And I think we finished second in Conference USA. And again, it comes down to economics, right? It comes down to money. And I think at that time, where we were from a following standpoint, maybe we had average 20,000 fans a game or something like that. So I think that I would only have to say that was being looked at, because of that. And then two, there was not as many bowl games as it is now. Of course, I mean, there's so many bowls now. But it really hurt it for us not to go to a bowl. We were hoping, the dream during that time was to play Alabama in the bowl. But of course, and I mean, but I feel like if we would have went to a bowl, we would have won. I mean, that team was very good, very, very good that year. Yeah.
So you guys, in your senior season, you finished your great career at UAB with a 6-5 record in your senior year in 2001. Then you played a year with the Edmonton Eskimos and in the Canadian Football League, and then you played 1 year with the Wyoming Cavalry of the Indoor Football League. So, how did you feel overall about your career at UAB and professionally?
Well, so if you would have asked me that at the age of 30, I would have I would have told you it was disappointing, or I didn't reach my max potential, what I felt like I could do athletically and things like that. And so I think at that age I felt like that. Um, that I didn't reach my potential. I felt like that I could have did more. I think at that age, I felt like I should have. The goal was to reach the NFL Hall of Fame, and and I look at my career now from a standpoint being at 40. I look at it totally different now. Now that I get older, I realize I had a gift from God. I got a free education, and I got to meet some great people. And so on top of that, I realized how difficult it is for kids to get the opportunity to play Division I sports, and how difficult it is for kids to get the opportunity to play professional sports on any level. And so you hear a lot of kids that that the parents or the kids say, well, I'll just we'll just go to UAB, especially local because it's right here in Birmingham. But when you look at the level of football and the level of athletics that the program is on, it's not quite that easy. And so I look back and I left UAB and I didn't get drafted. I got a call from the Jacksonville Jaguars in the 6th round. They had one pick in the 7th, and they didn't take me. And so I went to I ended up signing with Edmonton Eskimos the next year out, and then I ended up going to Wyoming Cavalry, and I ended up getting 2 shots at the NFL. I went out to Oakland for camp and got released, and I went to Buffalo Bills and got released or whatever. And I pressed for about 5 years after college, and really did want to reach that dream of playing on Sundays, as far as building a long-term career. And so I did get a chance to smell it. And so it was a great experience. I made friends on that level. And so I think when you look at it on the grand scheme of things, now, being at the age of 40, you kind of look back on your life and reflect like, okay, it was a good run, met great people, saw great places. and it was enjoyable. And so now, I mean, I learned a lot of things from it. And so I just, I'm proud to be a Blazer, and I'm proud to be a part of the UAB family, and I'm happy to see what Coach Clark and those guys are doing now. I'm happy for Spencer Brown, and I'm happy for everything that they're accomplishing.
You mentioned it earlier, and but you played under head coach Watson Brown and offensive coordinator Pat Sullivan. What was it like playing for them?
Man, I had the privilege to start playing it for Pat Sullivan. He came in my sophomore season,
Mm-hmm.
and Coach Sullivan is an amazing guy. Bless his soul. He is the most mild mannered man that I have ever met, but so powerful. Uh, he never hardly raised his voice. And he never had to. I mean, the players had so much respect for him. He was so knowledgeable when it came to offensive game plan and coaching the quarterbacks and things like that. And he was just a great guy on and off the field. He was a Christian, and it was very great to have the opportunity to play for Coach. I mean, we would roll into cities and Coach get off the bus and he's getting autographs. Like, it's like we the Heisman Trophy. We roll into whatever city it is. It's like he has a fan club waiting, and I mean, but that was never a big thing to him, man. And we didn't look at it as a big thing either, man. It was just Coach, but he was a great guy to play for. And Watson Brown was also a great guy. He Watson really cared for the program. He really believed in UAB. He really went through a lot to get that program to where when he first got there to where it was when he left. And you look at the things that he went through. A lot of coaches probably would have looked for ways to get out. And Watson hung in there because he really believed in UAB. And I had a conversation with Watson probably about I guess about a month ago, and he's doing radio up in Nashville actually. And so yeah, he's like a radio host up there. So we had a conversation about a month ago, and he's a funny guy. He was just saying like, man, we knew if we got to your mom, we could get you. Otherwise, we weren't gonna get you. And that's what he did. And so he Watson was smart enough to build a great coaching assistant coaching staff around him. I mean, he had Bill Clay. Bill Clay had a great resume, great defense coordinator. Rick Christophel, which is now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. George Pugh, which I still keep in touch with. Played at Bama and recruited Dan Marino. I mean, you look at people like George Pugh, Coach Pugh. He recruited Dan Marino to Pittsburgh. I mean, this guy was a legitimate strong recruiter. Woodrow Lowe he had, who played in the NFL for many years, and Coach Neal, which coached out at the University of Oregon with those guys. I mean, we had a great staff, Coach Donahoe and those guys, and so it was great times for UAB. And I mean, we played a tough schedule year in and year out.
Okay. And speaking of a tough schedule, what was the toughest environment you ever played in at UAB? What would you say?
Florida State by far, man. Florida State, man. I got a good group of friends that I keep in touch with, that we played at UAB together, and that's the running joke about Florida State. When I grew up as a kid, that was the school that I kind of dreamed of going to. I always kind of saw them play on TV, and Vanover was the big kick returner they had back there. That's before you were born, and I mean they were just high flying. Deion Sanders, and so I dreamed of playing for Florida State. And so my senior year, by the time we got to Florida State, I mean, I had been through the fire and back. I mean, starting with Nebraska, Tennessee, Virginia Tech. I had been to quite a few big schools, Kansas and all these places. So we get to Florida State, and we planned in my senior year, and I never forget, it was like unbelievable. So the atmosphere, it's a hot Saturday day. Bobby Bowden is on the sideline, and the guy comes out on a horse. And when he comes out on that horse, and he sticks that thing in the middle of that Indian comes out and he sticks that, I'm sorry, Native American, he sticks it in the middle of the field, and you could not hear yourself think, man. The crowd goes crazy, and it hit me right there, like, man, I'm a senior, like and so I remember going into that game, and by that time you get a few little nerves sometime before when you play in those games, but I was like a different type of nervous. And I remember getting the ball against Florida State. It had to be in the first series or so, and I fumbled the ball, and I didn't even realize it was a wraparound draw. I didn't even realize that I had fumbled the ball until, like, I'm searching for it, and then I hear the Indian chant. Oh, I said, oh, this is not good. And before I can get up off the ground, Darnell Dockett, which was a big, huge defensive end, played in the NFL a long time, he's standing over me. And he looks at me, he said, you can't run on us. We're Florida State. And I remember that statement that he made, and looking up at him. And from then on, I was pissed. I was thinking, like, man, okay, it's time to play ball. The light switch came on, and so I ended up having a great game. But and they didn't beat us. It wasn't a blowout. I think they beat us like 20 something to 7, something like that. But I scored the only touchdown. But that was probably the most intimidating atmosphere that I could say that I played in.
If you could go back and change the result of one game, what would it be?
Southern Miss. Southern Miss both years. Both years. I would have to say Southern Miss hands down. I am I am related to Chad Williams, and he ended up playing with the Baltimore Ravens for a while, and he was a strong safety for Southern Miss. And so we went to rivalry high schools. He went to Winona High School. I was at Midfield, so we had been playing against each other since kids. So we get the chance to play against each other my junior year at Legion Field, and that was a good game for me. I rushed for over 100 yards that game. I was one of the only 3 backs that year to rush for 100. It was myself and LaDainian Tomlinson and Travis Henry for Tennessee. So their defense was ranked just as tough as UAB in the top 5. And that year, we had Southern Miss at Legion Field to win, which would have gave us 8 wins again. Like one of those close games, we go to overtime, and we had a play in the playbook that we used to run where we sneak the back out the backfield or sneak the tight end out the backfield and throw it or whatever. Anyway, we ran it early on in that game. I think that was something Sullivan drew up, and we got a little success in it. And in overtime, if I can't, either in overtime or right before overtime, I think we went to overtime, they ran that same play against us to beat us. And so they beat us that year. And so they stole one from us at Legion Field. And we played them tough and had the lead off and on that whole entire game. Then, the game that really hurt us was my senior year. We go to Southern Miss, and we go to Hattiesburg, and they beat us 3-0. And so we get to Hattiesburg. I get a phone call before the game from Chad, which was my cousin. He's talking trash the night before the game. Want to keep me up late, and so we play against them that game, and I never forget. We get down on like the 5-yard line. Well, actually, we was on the 3-yard line, and we ran a pass play going in to TJ Simmons. He catches the touchdown, and they call illegal man downfield. They say one of our offensive linemen were downfield. They thought the ball was at the 5, so they go the penalty from the 5, and the ball was at the 3. And that was the difference between us winning the game 7-3 and losing the game 3-0. And so we lost that game. And I remember I was talking to Coach Brown about that game probably about a month ago, and we were on the phone. And the funny thing about that game is I was extremely upset after the game that they stole it that way. And our team was upset. And so they interviewed us after the game, and well, they interviewed me after the game one on one personally. And I remember making some pretty terrible comments about the referees. And so probably that next week, not even 5 days later, Coach Brown has called me in the office, and I'm like, "Hey, Coach, what's going on?" And he gives me this letter, and it's from Conference USA, basically saying if you make those comments again, suspended for the rest of the season or whatever. So me and Watson was laughing about that about a month ago. He remembered, me getting that letter, that I had spoken too much. But yeah, they stole that one. So you pick one, but yeah, between Southern Miss 2001 and Southern Miss 2000, both of them ranked pretty high on the list.
So, what team did you hate playing the most?
The team that I hated playing the most was probably Louisville. Louisville was a tough team, even back then. I mean, we struggled against Louisville for some reason. They, it was going to be a dogfight. So if I had to pick a team that I knew that was going to be an extreme dogfight that you kind of hate playing, would be University of Louisville. Yeah, they were tough.
What was one of your favorite games you ever played in?
I would say I would say Southern Miss. Southern Miss my junior year. Yeah, Southern Miss my junior year. That was one of my favorite games. Like I said, I really was playing from a personal standpoint because my junior year, and that game was very personal, was because we had a loaded backfield that year. We had Carl Fair, we had Percy Coleman, we had Cedric Thatch. I mean, you could go for like day. I don't think people realize, like, I went, like, my experience in the pros, being in some of those meeting rooms, I looked around and was thinking, like, my junior year college running back room was tougher than this. Like, it was so freaking talented. Like, there's names, I mean, that people didn't even know exist that were extremely talented. I mean, you had guys like Bernard Anderson. I mean, you had guys that were like stacked up on top of each other that, people never even got a chance to really hear about because it was so competitive. And so my junior year, here I am a junior, and Cedric Thatch, which was an extreme good back out of Tanner, Alabama, Carl Fair, which was a junior college transfer, Percy Coleman, which was the Vestavia kid. All these kids are seniors. And so here I am a junior, and so we get into that season, and it's kind of like we're sharing time. And so I had to kind of solidify myself as the starting running back, which was not easy being a junior and those guys being a senior. So every time, pretty much I got the opportunity that year, I was producing, and I was producing very well. And so we get to Southern Miss game, and I remember the commentators, or one of the news reporters interviewed Watson Brown and said, why don't you stop doing the running back by committee and just give Jegil the ball, give Dugger the ball? He's by far half the hot hand. He's your better back now. He's solidified that. Why not just give it to him just give it to him. And Watson Brown comment, whatever he meant by it was, we're going to give it to him this game against Southern Miss, but I don't think he wants it, or I don't know if he wants it against this defense because, this defense is number one against the run, blah, blah, blah. And so all I heard all week was how great they were on defensively and, these guys and blah, blah, blah. So by the time it came time to play, I was extremely pumped. And so, believe it or not, I didn't even start that game. I remember being on the sideline as a backup, and Carl Fair started. And we get to the second series on offense, and Watson Brown kind of looks at me like, get in the game. And so, I'm kind of like, now, the way I played, I had a personal vendetta on my shoulder. I'm pissed against my own coaches. I'm pissed against other teams. So, it's just like I'm pissed against everybody. So, of course, I played well. And so, yeah, that game was extremely fun.
Okay. So, would you have called yourself a bruising running back or a speed back, or a mixture of both?
I think I was a mixture of both. I think I always compare myself to like I always like to say a poor man, LaDainian Thomas, and I was more of a slasher, with speed. And Watson Brown talked about it best in his interview when he talked about me. He said, he brought up a good point. He said, you just never knew what you were going to get with this kid. Like every run was different. And he said that. And then I started reflecting my career and I said, wow, he hit it on the head. Every run was different. I mean, and so, it's hard to really say, oh, I was a power back or I was a speed back because you just never know. Like I would really mix it up. I would, I kind of, my thing was to look at the defense to kind of figure out what they were giving away and to take it. And then my goal was to always kind of keep them on their feet a little bit. Like they didn't know if I was going to come quick or I was going to come hard. And I think that helped me a lot of ways.
Okay. Who is your go-to guy, like a good friend while you were at UAB? And do you still talk to this person?
Man, so Bernard Anderson was my first friend at UAB. We came in as freshmen, so I always remember him as my first friend coming in. He was out of Florida, out of Tallahassee. We don't keep in touch much, but my go-to guys now, I have a circle of guys that I still keep in touch with. I'm best friends with Bryan Thomas, so we keep in touch a lot every day. And then Adrian Abrams and Otis Leverett and Marlon Bush. That's kind of like my circle that we play together and we stay together. And the funny thing about that is all those guys are defense. And so, when they come over to my house or we get together, I'm the shortest one. And so back then I didn't realize I didn't realize I was short. I didn't realize, height matter. I didn't realize I was under 6 feet. It was just like I was just as big as those guys. But now that I'm getting older, I'm looking like, what was I thinking? Like these guys are really big. It's funny. I was talking to Brian last week, and his dad is hilarious. And so his dad was saying like Diedrich Harjic, which was another running back, is an electrician now and came over to his house and he was saying like who did you hang with or whatever blah blah. And so then he came back and talked to Brian about it. And so Brian made the comment, well, we didn't allow offensive guys to hang with us, and that's why Diedrich, we didn't allow that. So then his dad said, well, you and Jegil hung together and Jegil hung out with you guys or whatever. He was like, well, that was different. He paid us to hang out. And so, but no, I kind of took to those guys, man. They were really fun. They played loose. They were tough. They were me. And to be honest with you, that was kind of like me as a player. I kind of always had that mean streak about me as a player. So I guess that's why we ended up being friends. But yeah, those are my go-to guys.
Okay. And you talked about some of them just now, but you had a great career in the record books, but you played along with some of the great Blazers like all time, Bryan Thomas, Eddie Freeman, Rhett Gallego, Percy Coleman, Willie Quinnie. The list goes on and on. But what do
Roddy
you
White,
remember?
yeah.
Roddy White came in near the tail end. Yeah.
Yeah, I played
So
Roddy,
what
yeah.
do you remember about some of these guys? Like what was it like playing with them?
Oh man, it was fun, man. Eddie, playing with Eddie Freeman, man. I don't think people realize like how freakishly athletic and talented he was. I mean, you're looking at a guy that was 6'5", 300 pounds with a six pack. I remember like, as fast as I was as a running back, I mean, for the first 10 yards of a sprint, Eddie could run with me, and he was just that explosive. So, to be around that level of talent, it was amazing. I think about Percy Coleman, and Percy was a walk on out of Vestavia, and I look at my career, and Percy was a year ahead of me, but if it was one back that I said at UAB gave me a fit, it was Percy Coleman. I mean, I knew that when it came spring ball, when it came to competition, Percy was going to be right there in the mix, and you had to beat out Percy because he could do so much. I mean, Percy could run the routes, Percy could catch. The girls like Percy. Percy, Percy was the man, and so the only way I would be able to get Percy was speed and power and things like that. But yeah, so he was one of those backs that I knew if I wanted to get to the front of the aisle, I had to go through Percy first, and it wasn't going to be easy. So yeah, he's a great guy. When I see him, we still laugh at that to this day because I'm sure he would probably tell you I was one of his nemesis as well on the field. But we love each other off the field, and so yeah, Rhett was a great kicker, man. Rowdy, I still remember when Rowdy came in as a freshman on our team, and he comes in, and Rowdy was always extremely confident. He was extremely cocky, and he comes in at a time where it's our junior senior year. We've built this culture, and him and Carlos and Daryl Hackney, all those guys come in together. And what was funny about Rowdy, man, is he goes to Watson Brown like midway through the year as a freshman. Is like, hey, I feel like I should be starting. I feel like I'm the man. And so he was that type of confident. But Roddy may not admit it to this day, but I would jump his butt at practice. Like I literally would jump Rowdy's butt at practice. I would like really curse him out at practice because we had built this culture. And Rowdy back then, when he came in as like a youngster, he wasn't the best practice player. He wasn't. He was kind of dragged butt. But I would get in his case and get in his face during practice. Back then because I was kind of like the captain, especially when it came to the offense. So yeah, but I remember all those guys, and Bryan Thomas. We would fight at practice. We hated each other, man. I mean, he would. I remember stories we still laugh at to this day, where Bryan's 6'5", 6'4", 280 pounds. And so there was a rule that we had at practice where, Bryan, I won't cut your legs. I won't cut block you. I mean, I won't hit you in your kneecaps if you agree not to try to bull rush me and run me over at practice. And so that was the agreement. But I recall like, us being at practice one day and we were scrimmaging. And so Bryan comes in and bull rushes me and he lays me flat on my butt. And so I'm sitting there and so he's laughing about it. I'm like, okay, all right. So, and then the next play I cut block his legs or whatever. And everybody's like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here, whatever. But nobody ever see the first blow. But yeah, it was so competitive with those guys. Abrams was a great middle linebacker. We always competed. He's the head coach at Minor High School now. And so, yeah, Marlon Bush, all those guys, man, it was great. It was great players to be around.
So how's life now? I understand that you're the founder of two companies, from what I found. But how'd they get started, and what do you want my listeners to know about them?
Oh man, so I want your listeners to know that starting and running these companies is probably tougher than running the football. That's for sure against LSU. So yeah, it's tough. Two companies, both of them technology based, and so I feel like that's been kind of like a gift from God for me to be able to participate in these companies. I've been through so much to get to where I am, and I'm still going through it to be able to move further along. So it's not easy by no means, but we continue to move forward and push forward, especially with COVID being where it is right now. It's not been easy at all to even have a job, let alone run a business. So right now, one of the companies is Pi. And we Pi Tech or Pi POS. And so that particular company, we manufacture financial technology, payment technology. Our focus go-to is our self-ordering kiosk, mainly for the hospitality and retail industries. So we kind of automate the process. We're working on contactless payment so that customers can use their wallet pay, things like that. So we're building some cool tech. We're in the process of launching some new stuff this month that I think will be pretty cool to come to the hospitality industry. So that's kind of a passion for me. And then the other one is civil, and civil is more so focused on community-based technology. So right now, our go-to is our grand temperature detection screening kiosk for COVID. So that's one of them. And then we also are in the process of, you'll probably see coming soon, introducing our gun detection technology, threat detection to reduce crime. And so those are kind of our go-to technologies there. And so, yeah, so all of it is keeping me extremely, extremely busy, extremely stressed. On top of that, I have a wife and a 5-year-old. And so I'm an old dad, and he's an interesting kid. His personality is nothing like my personality was, especially his age. He talks. I didn't even talk as a kid, and he talks a lot. He thinks he's the greatest athlete right now to walk the earth, but he is the most cautious kid. He won't even walk down the stairs without holding the rail. Uh, but it's funny because he was playing with some other kids the other day in the yard, and they were playing soccer. And the whole entire time he's playing soccer, he's telling them how great of a soccer player he is, and I'm gonna make it. I mean, it's like just nonstop. And so I'm having to tell him like, please be quiet and play. And so we get home, and I'm telling my wife like, oh my God, he's so annoying like to hear play because he talks so much. And she was like, I know it annoys the other parents. And I was like, I don't know where he gets it at that age or whatever. And she was like, he gets it from you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She was like, every time you guys play sports, I hear you in there. Like we got basketball set up, and I'm constantly talking trash to him. And I don't even realize it, but I'm constantly beating him up with trash talking. So I guess that does make sense, but he's a trash talker. And so that's pretty much where I am right now.
That's awesome. I did see the news coverage that you had with your grin system from Civil Tech at the daycare. That's great. And obviously with everything going on with COVID, it's a great piece of equipment that and I love the hand sanitizing feature too. That was pretty cool. So, is there anything else you would want my listeners to know about it? I mean, it was pretty cool. What would you want them to know
Yeah,
about it?
yeah. I mean, I definitely think Grin is in demand. I think anytime you can add any layer to be able to potentially protect you against COVID, I think it's worth it. With the hand sanitizer dispenser that it has and the thermal temperature, infrared temperature detection screening process, I definitely think it's important now that we are going into flu season.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely want to know, if there's a temperature, and there's a back end feature of it that has some tracing capability, so that you basically it tracks your image, so it's facial detection. So you're able to put a name with the image, and so you're able to keep an attendance record of everybody that's coming into your location as well. And so things like that is important for all type of business, whether it's corporate or restaurants or whatever. And as I said, whether it's wearing a mask or checking temperatures or social distancing, I think right now that we really need to take all precautions possible. COVID is very serious, and unfortunately, I heard today that the president was diagnosed with COVID, and so I definitely take that serious. I've lost a couple family members to it, and I know of a couple people to contract it, and from my understanding, it's a vicious it's a vicious virus. So Grin technology is definitely something to help businesses reopen and help them stay open, and kind of help reduce the spread of COVID.
It was great to see it and get to see it kind of firsthand what it does. But that's great. But so I read a little bit about you with your now being in the tech industry and stuff. But what motivates you in your career in the tech industry?
It's interesting to be in the tech industry, because if you would have asked me this when I was at UAB, I would have laughed at you. And definitely in high school, I would have said, no way. And so it's interesting because, I really tried. Anytime you are a Division I athlete, or any athlete on a collegiate level, or even on a high school level, or even in professional, you never want to give it up if you love the sport. That's the biggest thing to go through that transition of like, what do I do next? Because typically when you're competing on that level, like you eat, sleep, dream sports, and so that's where I was in my life. And so the hardest thing was transitioning. I mean, you read the story in the Birmingham Times, what I went through as far as even going through legal issues and things like that. That transition piece is so hard to figure out, what's going to make you whole, like sports made you whole. Because when you play in sports, like I say, you just wake up every morning. That's what you want to do. And when you lose that, you don't play anymore, right? So the transition piece is something that everybody go through. I know Bryan, we talk all the time. He's been going through it, leaving the Jets. And so when I first started transitioning, the first thing I went to was coaching. I taught high school. I coached for a couple years, and that was recommended by my old former high school coaches. We still keep in touch. So, hey, you'll be a great coach, and you're going to be a coach. And so I started coaching, and I started teaching history, and I didn't get it. Like I did not get the same feel I got when I played. Like, I mean, I love kids. I still mentor to this day, but I hate breaking down film for 10 hours. I didn't like sitting in the room, like watching the same play 5 times or 20 times or whatever. So it just, the aspects of it, the lifestyle, it wasn't fulfilling for me. Not saying I will never do it again. Now, I am a soccer coach for the 5-year-olds, and we won a lot of games. But just me being a full-time coach, that was something that did not meet my fulfillment at that time. So anyway, so I ended up getting into, of course, entrepreneurship and business. And so I've slowly graduated and moved towards technology. And it's amazing because, I have a bunch of tech guys that work for me, and I really do love it. I wake up every day like passionate. I feel like I'm still competing. I feel like I'm still playing sports. It's the one thing that I found that keeps me whole. It's very competitive, and it's even more competitive for me because I haven't been in it as long as some others. And so it's interesting now because I still have my same group of friends. Adrian and Brian and Otis and all those guys, and we get together. And the interesting thing about it is when we get together, they're all talking football. Like, I mean, they're either coaching football, they're training athletes, or they got a son playing football. And so, I mean, I love them to death, but I'm kind of like lost in the tech world now, where I'm like, I don't know about football anymore. So I'm not. I have to catch myself or whatever because I'm turned into a tech nerd. I'm not the football athlete player that I used to be.
So going into your UAB fandom, you mentioned it a little earlier, but you pledged $100,000 to the UAB Football Operations Center when it was announced that they were building it as a part of the return, which was one of the largest donations that the Operations Center got. But what made you want to contribute?
Well, honestly, prior to the program being shut down, if I told you I was at every game, I would not be telling the truth. I would be lying. If I told you that I was at 4 games a year, I would be lying. If I told you some seasons that I didn't even go to a game, I would be telling the truth. And so for many seasons, I didn't attend the game or whatever, and was not active in the program. And so when the program was shut down, it's like a wake up call. Like, oh shucks, wait a minute, this is real. And so at the time, when the program was shut down, I want to say it was like around, was it 15? Was that
the end of 14, start of
14? End of 14. Okay, so end of 14. So my wife was pregnant, is what I'm saying. So we had Caden, and so he was born in 15. And so it was detrimental because my wife went to UAB. She's a UAB grad. She's younger than I am, but so it started to be real that here I put in all this work on the field. Made these sacrifices on the field. Chose to go to this university over other universities. Graduated from this university, and so did my wife. And there's a possibility that my son is going to become a teenager or become in his 18, 20s or whatever. And I'm going to say, hey, I played football at that school. And he's going to say, yeah, right, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And so that hurts. That hit a soft spot because it's like taking everything that, you gave them your best years and they're going to basically end that and you don't have anything to show for it. And other than, a degree from the education standpoint. And so it really hurt me. And I think it hurt a lot of people. And, a lot of Blazers stepped up. A lot of people that believe in the program stepped up. And Coach Clark hung in there. The players hung in there. And so, me pledging to be a part of that, it was almost a no-brainer, because I want to see them do well. And so I'm their number number one fan now. I'm cheering for them, and I want to really see them do well and continue to move forward. And that's life. You don't realize a good thing until it's gone, and sometimes it takes killing something for it to grow back stronger. And so I think everybody kind of took the program for granted. I think there's always been respect for the program, but now that actually happened, it's like, okay, we got to keep this alive, and so it's great to see them going to bowl games and competing well. And so I look forward to seeing how they finish the year off.
That's great. So, I mean, and you mentioned a little bit, but what can you say about the growth of the football program since your days practicing? I go back to the days when I remember riding into Birmingham and I'd see the old practice field with the sand filling up the holes in the ground. So, what can you say about the growth of the program since those days to now?
Yeah, man, it's amazing because I look back at like the weight room that we worked out in Bartow Arena. It was so small, and the equipment was nothing. And I mean, and we made the best out of it. We had a great strength and conditioning coach in Marcus Bush, and so our facilities were probably last. They were very, that little tiny coach's office that we came into, and the meeting room that we piled into, and the field, the track that was concrete and running uphill. And it's like, I remember running my 40 time for the NFL uphill. And so, and still running a good time. But I mean, you look back at all this and all that, and it makes you even appreciate the LSU win. It makes you appreciate competing on the level that we competed on at that time based on the facilities that we had. So then you start to think like, wow, what if we would have had this stuff? But yeah, it really makes you appreciate. But that was all part of building. And one thing that I thought about when I came to UAB was that, and somebody talked to me about this, was, you can either make history or be a part of history. And so one of the reasons why I came to UAB was to make history. And I think I definitely, looking back, I did do that. I think all of our guys, even going back to the early days before me, those guys made history because we built something. And so I think these guys now are still making history, which is amazing. And I'm just, I'm so happy. The new stadium is coming next year. That's going to bring a lot more excitement to the program. That's going to bring a lot more eyes. I noticed that they're playing more games on Thursday nights. They played 2 already. And so, I get phone calls from all over the country. Hey, your Blazers on TV, your Blazers on TV, whatever. Like, okay. So, it brings that excitement, for us to play on TV and for them to be seen. And, and I think that, you look at a lot of these universities such as Alabama and some of these other ones that's been winning for some time, like, the benefits of the older guys are actually leading to these new benefits. And then the older guys are reaping benefits from what the younger guys are doing on the field. So, I mean, it's all a process of growth, but I mean, I definitely think that it's headed in the right direction.
Okay. And I've got a question on Facebook from an old Blazer too, Cedric Buchanan. He asked on Facebook, was running back your favorite position, or is it your favorite position?
Cedric Buchanan, tell him I said hello. And so that's a former Blazer. That name rings a bell. We haven't had a chance to really talk a lot, but that's one of the great Blazers. But he asked, was running back my favorite position?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If not, would you have wanted to play another position?
That's a good question, Cedric. I think that yes, I think it was my favorite position. Starting off in high school, I played defense, and that was, defensive back was probably one of the only other positions, or wide receiver I could see myself playing. But if I had to play another position, it would be defensive back. But I would say that, that gave me the tenacity as a running back, to be able to run between the tackles. And so I had that mentality. But yeah, running back I would say is my all time favorite position. It's still like one of those things where I can't really still to this day believe I played it, just because it's such a high profile position, and it's limited room for mistakes. But but yeah, I mean, I will say yes, it's my favorite position.
Okay. And my final question I got for you, and it's a lighthearted question, something I do with all my guests. If you had 25 hours in a day, what would you do with your extra hour?
Man, so honestly, Will, where I am in my life right now, and I'm hoping, praying, and dreaming that one day I will be able to slow down a little bit and spend some more time with the family. And so, with having a 5-year old, it's like you're constantly on the clock. You're constantly like you want to spend time with them. And I mean, right now, I talked to him today. He's like, "Hey, why can't I just be with you all day?" And I'm like, "You have, for one, you got to go to school. For two, I got work to do." So I mean, it's always like if I had that extra time, it would definitely go to the wife and kid, to give them some more time. It's never enough time in the day. So yeah, that would be it.
That's a great answer. I love it. Well, Jegil, thank you for joining, and I really hope my guests enjoyed the stories. I love them. It was some great stories, and hearing a lot. You pulled some names out of the hat on this one. I loved hearing all the call outs to all those guys, all the coaches too. Some names I haven't heard in a long time, but especially the player side of things too. And it's great getting to hear your story, and I know my listeners are going to enjoy it.
Sounds good. I really appreciate you having me on the show, Will, and I appreciate you creating this podcast. I think it's good for the Blazer family, and look forward to maybe seeing you at a game.
Thank you. All right. I want to thank Jagil for all his great stories and giving me and you guys a very informative stories about his time at UAB and how he's doing now. He really set the scene well in his stories, and it made me feel like I was right there with him, toting the rock for the Blazers. And if you guys want to learn more about his tech industries, you can find them by searching Civil Tech and Pi Tech. That's Civil, Civil Tech, and Pi Tech is Pye Tech. And I will try and provide some links on my Dragon's Den podcast website, and I'll post that link on my social pages. But I hope you guys enjoyed the episode as much as I did. Before I go, be sure to check out my social pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest updates on guest announcements, giveaways, and other Blazer related posts. So just search at Dragon's Den EFEL and like and follow the page. I will announce another prize pack giveaway coming up soon. I don't know if you guys saw the last one, but it had some good prizes from local stuff around here. It's nice to have you in Birmingham koozie, Dragon's Den podcast decal, and a UAB 58 UAT 56 decal, and um, a couple other great items. Baseball signed by Ryan Keaty. I got some. I'm going to change it up a little bit this time, so be on the lookout for those items and see what's coming in my next giveaway. So, with all that being said, good night and go Blazers.